Again, thanks so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. And for those who don't know you, Salah, I wanted to see if you could maybe kind of give us a little overview of your coaching experience and how long you've been coaching for, what got you coaching Valorant specifically, and how you met the Bonk team.
So I started in TF2, a very old game, where I was kind of really young, just playing a bit of competitive. And then I think with the whole Paladins Overwatch coming out, I moved to Paladins, did some early stuff there, played as a player in a few top teams, but realistically the scene wasn't huge back then. I then came back and coached a Paladins team from, they ended up being Cyclone Esports. They were pretty good during my tenure. After that, I went to Smite, where I had never really played the game before, and I started coaching there in a contenders level team, Nerd Rage. It was a really interesting experience because it was kind of switching over to a MOBA where you've never done anything even similar. So it was a good experience. And then I was playing CS:GO for passively the whole time. You know, I was watching a lot of it. Really, I was really interested in the game because I also played 1.6 as a child. And then I kind of just hanged around the semi-pro scene for a bit. Never really did anything notable, but you know, I was very active on it. Tried to watch as many games as possible, analyze that kind of stuff. I had some tenure in Fortnite. Not my best tenure, but it was all right. But
So I think you kind of touched a lot of things then.
Yeah, I've been in quite a few titles. I think 5 in total. Maybe I'm forgetting some, honestly.
Yeah.
And I kind of met Bonk during my Paladins tenure. I think it's been 4 or 5 years now, back when he first came into the scene and kind of popped off and became a world champion and during his 1 month of playing the game. And it basically just ended up being Bird is no longer coaching us. We're kind of parting ways with Nip. Do you want to jump in and maybe do something? And he knew me, he knew what I was good at, and yeah, we're just going from there, I guess.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, a lot of the Bonk squad is from Paladins, right? That's where most of those guys met up.
Originally, the NIP roster was Paladins, so it was Tenor, Bonker, Bird, and then I think Alex and Digodov was supposed to be on the roster. Alex's tenure didn't really last long in NIP. Digodov never got a chance due to coronavirus, and yeah, the other 3 there. But this current roster is only Bonker from Paladins. The rest are CS:GO guys.
Got it. Yeah, and it's I know he was playing with a little bit of a mixed squad with NIP, and now it's a full Swedish team, which is cool to see. I know the Swedes I'm used to seeing them dominate in FPS titles, so I was actually really really surprised that we didn't get a Swedish team in the final for the Vitality tournament. So
it was surprising.
It's good to see a couple full Swedish squads though. So just kind of to focus on Bonk specifically, what's your guys' regimen like? What are you guys working on as far as, are you guys, I know it could be a little difficult without a T1 org saying, okay, here's everything, make sure you're doing everything. Are you guys practicing every day? Is it kind of when you can, or how's the practice looking?
Right now it's actually, we're treating ourselves as if we're a professional team, even if we're not getting that salary or anything like that at the moment. Right now we are treating ourselves as if we were a professional team. We do a pretty straining scrim session every day, VOD reviews, pretty much everything a professional team would do at the moment. Yeah, that's
good.
We're pretty much acting as if we were a professional team.
And it really looked like that going into the Vitality Open. I know you guys didn't get out of groups, and if you're looking at just the little scoreboard, the bracket of the results, you might not really understand just kind of how close you guys were to getting out of that group. I know you had the grudge match against Prodigy, which was really close, both maps. It could have really easily been a 2-0 the other way. You guys made you dropped 1 map to Bread Hunters, which was a little bit scary, but on the other maps it was kind of 2 blowouts the other way. And then of course the heartbreaker to Party Parrots, which was pretty tough to watch. I love the tweets from the team afterwards. It was heartbreaking. I felt like I almost stopped watching. I felt like you guys, okay, that's good that Bonk's gonna close out this the split, but yeah, it was a little bit tough. So I guess my question is what are your guys' feelings post Vitality tournament? What were your guys' expectations going into the Vitality tournament? I'm sure it was, to make it out of groups. But you can't be too displeased with that performance. You guys didn't play too bad.
To be honest with you, I think we were very happy with our general performance in the Vitality tournament. Of course, we had, I think, about 3 games where realistically we should have won. I think the 2 Prodigy games we were actually ahead, like dominantly ahead for the first 2 games. We kind of just let it slip. We lacked that the kind of the clinical game where we couldn't really finish it out, and the same happened with Party Parrots. I think it just kind of stemmed from us being a newer team compared to the teams we were playing against. The Party Parrots, of course, have been going for a bit now, and they're a very, very, very good team. I think at first it was a bit heartbreaking going out because if it was just a 13-0, I think we would have been angry, but it wouldn't have hurt as much when we kind of dropped 3 eco rounds and kind of let it slip. But I think after like 10 minutes, after everyone cooled down, I think everyone kind of realized this is probably better for us. I think that, in my experience in esports, teams who don't have that really ridiculous honeymoon period tend to last longer because they kind of climb those mountains earlier rather than later, and it ends up being better for them.
That's a good way of looking at it, I think. Especially with so many more, it's so early in the scene. There's so many tournaments to come. There's a lot more work to get put in. You guys do a lot of unique things on certain maps, specifically Split. A lot of people, especially the commentators, act like they've never seen a Viper before. So you guys play Viper mid, which is a bit different than the typical Sage. So is there any kind of, without giving away too much that you don't feel comfortable giving away, is there any kind of thought process to running that Viper? You guys really did good. All your Split matches were either close or wins, so it wasn't like it's like, okay, you got to throw it away. So how do you guys feel about the Viper and in your guys' team?
I feel like we're a team that likes to do things differently and likes to have kind of the, we like to innovate a little bit. And I think that really comes from that. I think we saw potential and we still see potential in the Viper on that specific map in that area. And, without really saying too much, I think we have a lot of good ideas that can go around the Viper that can make it a very viable character there. I think a lot of people underestimate what it can really do.
Yeah, and besides, talking about the Viper and your guys' general agent selection, I also heard a lot of people, I wouldn't know, I guess it would be really the main criticism. I heard it a lot in some of your early matches on Bind. But commentators, from what it looked like to me, you guys were just spread out in a default. But they were talking about it like as if you guys had no idea what you were doing. You left Split the bomb, the spike down and spawn a couple times. Was there a method to that madness there? Did you guys have a strat, or were you really just bugging?
I think the problem is that because we're quite early in the Valorant scene, I think that people don't really understand a lot of what's going on.
Yeah.
To the highest of levels, I think people can understand a lot of it, but some things they really can't grasp at the moment, which is very normal. I think, a default, you coming from CSGO, a default is a very normal thing to do. Like, it's pretty much bread and butter for this kind of game, whereas, you're trying to get map control, trying to get information, maybe bait some utility out, which would be abilities in this case, and, go from there. I think, like NA does, I've been watching a bit of NA, just pure executes. They can work, if you're a Fabrican who has perfect executes, but if you mess up the execute, it's not going to go well 9 out of 10 times.
Yeah.
And I think, if you're running into a team with full abilities and really, you haven't put any pressure on them, it's just not going to work. So
yeah,
I think that was just generally the approach we take. And I think it's the approach most teams take if you look towards the higher levels.
Yeah, and there was a lot of success there too. So it wasn't like it was, they were at the same time of criticizing you guys were winning rounds. I'm pretty sure you guys won that map pretty handedly too. So it was interesting. It was interesting to hear the criticism as you're racking up the rounds. But that's how it goes sometimes. Yeah, and then so a couple interesting things. Are there any champions, just kind of your team specifically, that you guys kind of we've already talked about Viper, but I know there's some instances where you guys run a Sova. Without a Sage. I know, your Opper sometimes is on Breach a lot, right? You have Melons on Breach a lot.
Playing Breach a lot.
Yeah, so is there a certain reason why you hold certain agents higher than others? Is it just preference, or do you guys see something that other teams don't see?
I think the thing is with Valorant, I think people are trying to be too clear cut in the way that this works, this doesn't work, or this is good, or why don't you have this, or why don't you have that. I think the main thing is you can really run any agent in this game. I don't see an agent being unplayable right now. As it, in League of Legends, for example, of course, there are probably champions that you can't run because of they're just lackluster in the meta. But in Valorant, I don't think it's that way. I think it's more if you're playing a certain thing, if you're playing a certain composition and you're playing it well and you're playing around it, you're playing how you're supposed to play it. I think it can work anyways. I don't think there's a specific meta where you have to have Sage or you have to have Breach or you have to have any of the agents, in my opinion.
Okay, I like that, and that's honestly, we'll get to EU versus NA in a little bit, but that's a lot of criticism I hear out of the EU guys is NA just doesn't know what champions are really powerful, and you see that a lot in the differences in picks from the turn. I don't think I saw one Phoenix this entire Vitality Open, and you see it almost every match in NA. So it's definitely interesting to see, who values what. Speaking of upcoming tournaments, I know we have We Play Invitational. There's a lot of grumbling about the invites that they gave out. Understandably, there's a interesting teams that they forgot to invite. So just kind of wondering how you guys are preparing going into that, what your feelings are. And I know the scene's really new, so it's hard to have too much of an opinion about things like invites, but what your opinion is on the invites and what you guys are doing to prepare.
To be honest with you, I think the We Play invites were definitely some of the most interesting ones that have come out so far. I think other tournaments have had some interesting ones, but this one really took the cake in the way that it didn't make too much sense to a lot of people. I'm sure they had their own valid reasons for it, but it was underwhelming to say the least. And out of the top 10 teams in most of my contemporaries' opinion, two of them are there.
Yep.
And the two that are there are probably the newest, youngest, and least structured teams, probably.
Yeah, it's a very, very interesting list. Are you guys, I know, so that really makes the qualifiers going to be a really good tournament, I think, because there's going to be a lot of good teams from EU in the qualifiers, actually, with only two coming out. So are there any preparations you guys are making right now? Is it just full scrims when you guys start up? Are you guys making any changes after Vitality, or you guys are sticking with your roster for a while?
I don't think there's any major changes happening that I can really think of. I think you really can't prepare for something like this too much. It kind of is just we're starting at 6 today and going till 4 a.m. Best of ones all day. It's a hard thing to do for sure. I don't really think you can prepare it as much as just have the stamina and kind of being able to pace yourself in energy wise and kind of not being burnt out at the end is the main goal. But it's very hard, as we saw even yesterday. Whereas if you overload the games in one day, at the end the games just become lackluster in general.
Yeah, no, I saw a few players complaining about the long days over the weekend for that tournament. Hip or hype? Is it Hip or Hype?
I think it's Hip. Yeah.
Hip particularly was talking about that. I had a question about that too. He kind of stated in a tweet that Prodigy was a mixed team that came in, and he was really surprised with his results. With them specifically, did you guys kind of consider them a mixed team with no practice? Is that kind of correct, or was he being a little facetious there?
So from talking to other coaches about this and other people about this, and my general opinion is they were a mixed team, because while they had the three of the potential NIP people, we know that Hib is probably going to NIP at this point. I think it's knowledge. And we know that two of them were already in NIP with Lucker and Rhyme, and the two Turks, of course. I think it was a mixed team to an extent. They still had a core that they're practicing with, probably, I'd assume, and playing with, and a core that they feel like they're going to carry on with. However, the other two players, of course, because of the way, how early it is in that core as well, it was a mixed team. And I think it wasn't really surprising to me how well they did. And I don't think it was surprising to anyone else who really understands what was going on, because they kind of just were a team that didn't have anything to lose, because we knew that the two players weren't going to be part of that NIP roster realistically, unless something, very surprising happens. And we knew that.
They've been playing that way. I've kind of with a no care attitude. It's been working out really well for them, honestly, over the past couple tournaments.
It's a
And
scary
matches.
thing having some really good aimers against you when they just don't care, and
Yeah.
they're just, you wouldn't expect any other team to do it. It's a difficult playstyle to play against, and we saw that with, I think pretty much every team being dethroned by them apart from G2. I think Fabrican lost to them. I know Paris lost to them. Fabrican lost twice. We lost. It was a rough one to play against them, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, it was a tough match. I remember a lot of insiders kind of really excited to watch you guys play against Prodigy, and it didn't let up too. It was really close matches, both maps.
Yeah.
So how do you guys feel about the way they're handling map bans and I believe it was Riot that made a comment that they're not putting out any agent bans either. It's going to be, they're kind of keeping balancing to themselves, and then it's really going to be up to teams to pick which ones they want. So how do you feel about how tournaments are handling map bans, how you would handle it, and same things with the agents? Are you happy that we're not going to be banning them anytime soon?
I think it's kind of hard to straight up ban agents right now because we don't have enough, pretty much. I think if I were to pick, a system for that would kind of, I would enjoy. I think it would probably be no mirror matches, so basically a drafting process, but no bans, of course. But each team has their pick of their champions. You can evenly distribute the meta champion or the meta agents, and I think it would add an extra layer to it that maybe this game would benefit from. I don't know though. Maybe it would also make it a bit more stale and make it a bit more drafty, and that becomes more of the focus and less preparation is kind of, you can't have as much preparation when you don't know if you're going to get that certain pick. I think, what was the second question? It was about
map bans. It's really interesting with just the number of maps right now, how people are handling bans or lack of bans, really.
It's impossible to do map bans right now, in my opinion. If you're playing a best of 3 or especially a best of 5, a best of 1, I think it's fine. You can just give both teams, a ban, and then do something according to that. But when it's a best of 3 and a best of 5, it's always going to kind of it's always going to suit one team more than the other. I think one team is going to win hard, and especially with the best of 5, it's pretty much impossible because there's not even 5 maps. I think we need more maps and we need more agents to start getting into that kind of stuff. I think right now, I'm not sure what the perfect format per se would be. I know a lot of people have opinions on it. I haven't really put much thought into it, but I just think it's better to leave it alone for now and not really try and do anything too crazy, and then just let more maps be funneled out, let more agents be funneled out, and then start, try and come up with ideas for that.
Yeah, I think the consensus is we definitely need at least one more map to kind of make this easier for the tournament organizers.
Yeah, we do.
So I would think you guys, you kind of touched on it before. You have a unique style. I always hear people talk about Bonkar's, Bucky and things like that. Do you guys, can you see your team ever kind of folding to the meta, giving into the meta? Or you guys, is that just your guys' philosophy that you're constantly going to be experimenting and constantly going to be trying out new things? Or is it just because it's a new game?
I think it's a bit of both. I think because it's a new game, there really, in my opinion, isn't a set in stone meta that you just have to abide by. It's a lot easier to do a lot of different things and kind of try things out because teams don't really know how to play against that either, maybe, per se. I mean, we saw it with Fabrican yesterday where they brought out a Rainer on Split. It kind of gave them the map for free because the other team just didn't know how to play against it. I think it was Prodigy. Yeah. They just didn't know how to play against. They were expecting one thing for Fabrican did another thing, and it worked out really well for them. I think we're not taking the philosophy necessarily that we have to be doing something different. I think generally our comps aren't extremely, bizarre. I think we run a lot of the same comps as Fabrican even. But we definitely want to play our own game and kind of do our own things and not really have to be, forced into any standards this early into the game for sure.
Yeah, I think that stands out. So in regards to NA versus EU, I know NA's been getting a lot more organization support, so it's really easy for them to do things like hand out invites to tournaments because most of the teams already have orgs, so it's kind of easy to spot, okay, which team should be brought in. Do you feel like your team can kind of, not even just you guys, but besides G2, there hasn't been too much in the way of EU orgs picking up rosters. How long do you guys plan on holding out, or do you guys talking to any rosters right now? Is it kind of like open season, or whoever can pick you guys up? You guys are looking for some support, or do you think it's going to be a big factor in the discussion between NA and EU if orgs keep holding out?
I think that discussion right now has been kind of not overblown, but I think people have got it a little bit the wrong way. I think it's quite obvious to see that the NA organization strategy has been just to pick up the people with the most following and kind of go from there, pick up full rosters, whatever. TSM having the ex-CSGO players. I know that other teams, T1 have of course the famous CSGO players as well. I know some other orgs have some Overwatch players, blah blah blah. They've generally gone for the bigger people, some Apex people, blah blah blah. And I think the streamers, I think that you've seen a lot of CSGO people and a lot of CSGO pros who weren't streaming before in CSGO because it really isn't mandatory or expected there even to start streaming a lot. And I think that ethic doesn't really work in EU as much. I know G2 do it, but the general consensus in EU is that we act like fully professional, and we don't want to scrim because we may be giving something away, stream because we may be giving something away. We don't have time to stream because we're practicing so much, and I think that that really didn't help us. But I think it's not really going to matter in the long run. I think the EU orgs are kind of just waiting for the right moment. I think, from my knowledge, there's a lot of EU orgs that are kind of just waiting for the perfect team. They're kind of being a bit hesitant on it, but I do think soon enough we're going to see a bit of a burst of orgs, just joining the scene pretty much and picking up their teams.
Yeah, because there's a lot of EU orgs that are missing. You have Vitality, who just ran the tournament, doesn't have a team. You have Fnatic, Navi, OG, Mouse. So there's a lot of teams out there that I feel like would have an FPS team in this title. That's kind of surprising me that they haven't picked up someone yet, but I'm sure it'll come soon. Like you said, it makes sense. And I think the CEO of Vitality actually put out a response basically saying exactly what you just said, that he's kind of waiting to see what happens and to find the right mix of team and players.
Yeah.
So I can see that. But what about playstyle specifically? Have you been able to watch any NA VODs, any NA tournaments? Are there any major differences that you've seen, besides Phoenix, that the NA teams kind of have? From what I've noticed, it's a lot more, 5-man rushing sites than kind of prepared, map control and things like that.
I haven't watched it too much just because we're not really competing against them at the moment. So it's kind of, it doesn't, I don't have a lot of time in the day anyways. And when I kind of don't want to watch NA while I'm laying in bed. But on the off chance I do see a little bit of difference. I think generally they're still playing kind of a similar game to some teams in the EU, but I think it's much more basic and much more, like you said, execute oriented. They kind of just, don't really try and feel out the map, or I don't really see teams, using the map to its full advantage. More I see, more execute based play, just get into a site 5-man and play post plant. But yeah, I think with NA and EU, I think the playstyles are always going to be different just because of the ethic and the way the players are. I think culture is a big part in that. And I think, if I was, for example, if I were to go over to NA, I think I'd be hard pressed to try and enforce a system that I wanted to onto those players.
Yeah, it's very, very run and gun. It seems like very individualistic. And I feel like you can see that with the Phoenix pick itself. Phoenix itself is a lot more, okay, what individual plays can you make? What aggressive plays can you make? Whereas Breach, who is really the counterpart in EU for Phoenix, is a lot more, team-oriented and team setups and things like that. So I think you can see it in general philosophies.
I think it's, I remember talking about this with someone, and I think the consensus between us was that they picked the Phoenix over the Breach because they assumed, I think they've probably tried Breach at some point and said, wow, this is really hard to entry with. I think they see Breach as kind of that, entry character, I'm going to flash myself in and stun myself in and go. And they realized that it doesn't really work like that with Breach. It's not actually the greatest character to do that with. And they said, oh, but look at Phoenix, he can actually do that. And it's more of that pug style, just I'm going to flash myself in and take a peek. I think it's just mainly that. I think they were Maybe I'm wrong, but I think they didn't really give Breach enough time, and they didn't really try it as much as they maybe could have. But just
Yeah,
curious, maybe the Phoenix is the right pick. Maybe they have it correctly.
yeah, he's pretty critical to a lot of teams' compositions, and to see him just completely, not completely, but really ignored in NA is pretty interesting. And I also see that even in CS:GO, a lot of the NAs is really abuse smokes, get hyper aggressive when you don't expect it, and Phoenix kind of lends to that. It makes it
Yeah,
easy to be abuse smokes and things like that. So I can see
yeah.
why NAs picked that up. It makes sense to me. Let me see here. A quick question. So about the game itself, is there any agents that you think need rebalancing? I know a lot of people have talked about the op gun. Is there any agents or weapons that are kind of just like, okay, this is definitely not going to last long? There'll be a nerf coming soon.
I think I hold a bit of a controversial opinion. Well, I know a lot of people share this opinion with me, but I think the general community thinks that the AWP is overpowered. When, in my opinion, it actually is quite underpowered comparatively to CS:GO. I think maybe even you have noticed that it's not the same. There's in this game the movement speed is a lot slower. Getting shot hard, it really slows you down much more. The inaccuracy is quite harsh. I think you can't really take these crazy picks because you kind of have to wait for a second, and it's a lot harder. Of course it's good. At the end of the day, it's a one-shot kill, and I don't think any nerf is going to change that. They'd have to, and if they nerfed anything towards that, if they nerfed it too hard, I think they'd probably be changing the way they want that gun to work, which is like the open CS:GO. I think it's OP in ranked because people don't know how to deal with it, to be honest with you. And I think that's why people kind of think that it is OP, but I really don't see it being overpowered or needing enough. I think, in fact, it probably just needs a buff or something in the game that's affecting that needs a buff.
Yeah, it's not like I feel like you see players who are a little bit comfortable with it, like Mixwell, like Ordell in NA, and it makes people see this at high levels and get frustrated, or play against it in rank and not know how to deal with it in ranked and get frustrated and he thinks it needs a nerf. But I think once the highest tier 1 teams start, I feel like they can already kind of handle it out fine. They know how to work around it. So
it's not taking over a game the way you used to see CS:GO players taking over a game with an AWP.
Yeah.
In CS:GO, if you're playing against a very good AWPer, it's almost impossible to do anything. That guy will make that game hell for you. Think of Kenny S back in the day. Think of Guardian. Think of Zywoo now, for example. Some of the best players in the world. Simple. They all are very good at using the AWP, and that's why they're kind of able to take over the game. But I don't see that happening in this game as much. I think you can still kind of control the game. Like G2, they really found something with that double AWP that they were using with Artis and Mixwell, but I think it is definitely a lot harder to take over the game like that in this game.
Yeah, and people don't understand, once you start losing with double op, that your economy is just gone. Yeah,
it's a high risk, high reward kind of thing, but it's also it is very high risk to even run one AWP, let alone two.
Yeah, it's their play style is interesting. Their play style was closest to some NA teams, and which is weird. I feel like people were calling them very puggy, but it just did seem like it was a lot of certain players showing out, especially on the maps that they're comfortable with. You can tell when they're comfortable on maps, they just take a lot more aggressive peaks.
Would this be G2 we're talking about?
G2, yeah. Do you guys see them as the standout #1 team in Europe right now? Or
I can't speak for my team, but in my opinion, you can't really qualify them as a #1 team. While they did win this tournament convincingly, it wasn't. I think it was more of that prodigy stuff again, where it's impossible to play against them because they don't have structure. They don't have, they're not like Fabrican or Party Parrots or need like us or need more DM. Where if you watch those games between us teams, they were great games. They were really close. Really, you were seeing a lot of cool shit coming out. Whereas if you watch the Prodigy G2 games, it kind of was just trying to outflag each other. Yeah, it was just game battles. There wasn't a lot of real content in that, in my think, and I think they can be an amazing team if they add that structure, and if they add that, maybe they could be an amazing team. But right now, I think it's impossible to kind of say they're a #1 team.
Yeah, and I know it's kind of impossible to compare, but how do you see the top teams from EU against NA? Do you think that there's a clear-cut advantage. It's been really weird for me to hear casters and analysts claim that NA is even being from here, I root for them. I love the rivalry. I want us to beat you guys every time we play against you guys. But even I had to kind of look at them funny. I don't think there's been a single match, just with everything going on in the pandemic. I don't see how there could have been. I think there's a single match between NA and EU.
I think it's one of those things where I think both sides are going to say we're going to win. I mean, that's just how it rolls, right? In anything, any competition, I think when it's a country versus a country, anyone who's from that country that is competing, of course, they're going to, show some kind of, confidence in their team's ability. And I think it's going to be about who has figured out Valorant better. I think the first international LAN we see, which may be soon, maybe far, I think the first international LAN we'll see is going to be very interesting. And I think it'll either go two ways. It'll either be very even and, we'll have some NA teams going far and some EU teams going far, kind of just a mix, the best NA teams and the best EU teams kind of matching up well, and maybe we'll see like a final like that. It might be one region just dominating. If I were, of course, I have to say it was probably be EU dominating.
just from history, I think that's how it usually goes, which is why I'm very wary to claim any sort of NA or any title right now. Even if TSM looks good, they still went into this most recent Pulse Invitational and got knocked out by Cloud9, who didn't even win the tournament. So like you have teams like Fabricant, like they lost, but they're losing to G2 or they're losing to Prodigy's kind of a weird one for me. But Party Parrots are another solid team, and these are solid teams that have been around for a while. Whereas pretty brand new squads took matches off of TSM and Immortal, so it's kind of hard for me to see a clear cut number one NA team right now. And whereas in the EU, I can see a big middle pack, but no clear cut number one too. So
I think we've been seeing it already, and I think we're going to see it even more in the coming weeks. I think this constant fluctuation of top teams or who's going to be the number one. I think right now you're probably going to see the top six maybe, and everyone in that top six is very liable to pick up take a series against the other team. I don't see there's not a far and ahead number one in my opinion. I think when Fish 123 were number one, for example, I think the game was still earlier. I think people were still kind of figuring out what was going on, and they kind of benefited from that. But right now, Party Parrots is, I think, opinion-wise, everyone shares they're probably number one just from what they've done. You just give it to them, but they are very vulnerable against all the other teams, and all the other teams are very vulnerable against them. And we have this rock, paper, scissors thing going where, anyone can win a series against anyone right now. Amongst the top.
Yeah, I would definitely see. I know a lot of people are giving Fabricant a lot of rising stock, maybe Party Parrots a little bit of kind of stock that's going down, but it does seem like it's really any given day when everyone's playing against each other right now. So it's going to be interesting to see the kind of meta develop. One kind of question for you, not because I know you guys, I'm sure you love everyone on your team right now, but so not kind of highlighting who you're replacing. But if there's one player, EU, NA, Japan, wherever, that you could pick up and coach, maybe not build a team around, but just one specific player that you would like on your team if you didn't have to replace anyone. Is there anyone that you would pick up?
Ooh, that's a good question. Let me think about that for a second.
Yeah, and keeping in mind the attitude, someone who you would actually think could really bring a team up.
Honestly, it's going to sound like a cop-out, but I don't really think there's a player right now that I enjoy coaching more than my own team.
And that is a cop-out. That is a cop-out. You got to pick one player.
The thing is, I really genuinely can't think of a player that's that really stands out to me. I'd love to kind of be a coach for that guy. Maybe the T1 NA. I think the T1 NA team, some players from there, I think it would be interesting to coach them. I think, I really enjoy Brax, the way he plays CSGO, the way he plays this game. I like Skadoodle, AZK has always been I've regarded them really highly always. So I think I can't pick a specific player from there, but I think if I was looking for something different, I think that would be a very, very cool experience.
That makes a lot of sense to me. And I always compare, or I was comparing Mountain to Skadoodle when I was watching him a lot. He's not very. He's one of those. I'm going to hold my spot, get my op kills, and then kind of move on to the next. Kind of reposition myself. He's not very flashy in a good way. In a good way,
Yeah.
and that reminded me a lot of Skadoodle.
Yeah.
Okay, I like that. And then Forrest. Let me see here. Did you have any shout outs or anything you want? I think that's pretty much it as far as questions. Do you have any questions for me? Anyone you wanted to shout out?
Of course, shout out my team. Shout out to any organizations that are interested, of course.
Yes. Bonk, looking for an org. Really good players.
I think a question I have for you is, you asked me this, but who do you think the top EU teams are right now?
I think Fabricant. They remind me a lot of Astralis, and I'm very high on Zipan. I think he might be one of the best players in EU. I see him, and he doesn't have a lot of bad habits, and that's he kind of seems like he's like a Valorant player. He doesn't look like a CS:GO player to me. He looks like a Valorant player, which is really different. I think Mixwell's good, but I think Mixwell might be the best player right now. But that he's just kind of just naturally gifted, and he was like that in CS:GO. I was really surprised that he didn't stay on a T1 team in CS:GO. So I think he's really good, but he's going to get passed up. I think he stands out right now, but there's the guys like Zipan and some other people might start passing up. So I think Fabricant is probably number one, even though they've been consistently placing number 3 at tournaments, I feel like. And then if G2 can get some structure under them, they could be a great team too. And then I'm really excited to see the Swedes. I'm really excited to see them. I'm really excited to see you guys progress. And I get nervous for Party Parrots. I feel like Angel, I don't know. I've just seen him get replaced from so many teams. I hope that doesn't happen with him here. I hope he can kind of keep his young guns and kind of make them better and better. But I would say Fabricant right now. I like them. They have a lot to work on. But they have the strongest, I feel like, foundation.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good answer. I think I can agree with that. I'm not really sure where I would go with that, but I think it's better to leave.
All right, yeah, for sure. Yeah, thanks for your time. I really appreciate it. I know it's you got a lot going on right now with all the tournaments and everything, so I appreciate you taking the time.
It's been fun, man.
All right, have a good one, and I'll speak to you soon.
Yeah, you too.